Moving towards Superman and Lois, the one of the last standing DC TV shows on the CW. Hopefully, we get to keep it, or it moves to Max. Putting that into the
Hmm.
universe right now, manifesting that because season three is rather solid. Like episode nine could have been better. I think unfortunately, if you chop the kids out, it's a really, really great episode. If you keep the kids in, it's a little middling. But the Lois plot continues to serve.
It really does. I'm. There are never enough scenes that just show what a powerhouse Bitsy Tulloch is, and I feel like seeing so many shows like this would skip over important moments like this, but everything we saw Lois go through in this episode, um, the fact that it was called the dress, the episode's primary storyline was not John Henry Irons and what was going on with Bruno Mannheim. It was about what Lois was feeling, her fears over her battle with cancer, and how that might lead to her mastectomy, and how that might impact her mental health. And I just was in awe of that storyline because these were conversations that I don't think are had enough on television. And it was just so powerful. I feel like I'm going to use that word a lot. It was very powerful storytelling. And I know the fact that she didn't want to hold on to the dress and that she was being a bit abrupt with Clark. Obviously, he knew something was wrong, but it was also very important, I think, that it was Lana who had the conversation with her in the end. And we've always said how the Lois and Lana friendship is one of the best but also untapped parts of the show. And I think to finally bring it back here and have that conversation, you didn't actually get to see them speak that much, but the fact that it was Lana who had that conversation with her and the snippets that you saw, that's not the kind of conversation that would be had in a show like this. So we talked about how like the Flash is revolutionary and how the Flash changes the game, but Superman and Lois is doing things out here that nothing in the genre has ever dared to do before. And I just thought that was such an incredible scene. It was also such it was they were such important character moments for Lois and Lana as well. And just to see two women bonding over such a real life thing in such a super show, if you will, it was just I think revolutionary.
Mm. I just what's special about the way that they're doing the storyline is that it doesn't feel exploitative.
Mm-hmm.
Like it is a chance for the characters to have real, honest conversations that people do have in real life, and to balance everybody's emotions. Like I loved the subtlety of Tyler Hoechlin's performance in this episode, playing a husband who is hurt by his wife's decision to get rid of a dress that is important to both of them, but also trying to leave space for how she feels. And then Bitsy is doing wonderful work as a woman who is going through this, and she knows that she's going through it with her family, but it is happening to her. And I
Mm-hmm.
loved that Lana got to acknowledge that for her. Like it is you going through this with your family, but this is your body, and your body is set to change, and how you see yourself is going to change. And I like that Lois was concerned about her mental health, was concerned about how she would see herself, was concerned about how Clark would see her, even how she knows her husband, and that wouldn't be a thing for him. It is still a massive change. Like a mastectomy is going to some people, when it's not you, you're like, well, it's about her health. Like, yes, but it's also her body image. It's how she conceives of herself. Like to be a woman, like she said, to have felt like she finally came in to liking her body. Like she's gone through so many things as an adult woman, and and sometimes pregnancies can be traumatic too. Like to go through giving birth to her twins, the changes her body would have gone through there, now the changes her body is going through because of cancer. And she's like, it never ends. It's always something. We're always going through pain in some capacity as women, and now I have to have this life altering surgery to save my life, and it's just unfair. But still trying to find something to grasp onto, to not lose herself in the grief of this change that is coming.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was also important that it kind of justified that it was her point of view and how she saw herself, which is why it was important, I think, to flash back to the time she wore the dress. Believe it was 17 years ago, because she said she'd never felt more beautiful in that moment. And it wasn't about the fact that she was the great Lois Lane or that she won an award. It was about the fact that she personally said she'd never felt more beautiful than she did in that moment, which is why she wanted to get rid of the dress because she felt like she'd never feel like that ever again. And I thought that was so poignant because we know Clark will always see her the same. We know that everyone around her is there for her and loves her. But it was very much important that Lois feel heard in this episode because she had some concerns, and it's always justified when it's how you feel. And like you said, Sabrina, she's going through it. Of course, the other people are going through it with her, but it's happening to her. And she will be the one obviously most changed by this experience. So I thought that was such an important and it felt so subtle in the way they did it. It you could see that something was bothering Lois, but the fact that Clark didn't get it right away, Lana did get it right away. Um, it was just I thought it was such an expert example of that, and you can understand why she's feeling that way. And I think that was such a like authentic, again, human and powerful kind of storyline to adapt because when you look at what else is going on in the episode, and then we just have these long conversations about how this woman's feeling and how this what's happening in her life is really affecting her. I thought it was beautiful.
It's just so good. I'm saying they're just this. Sabrina Lois is just intelligent, like
Very much so.
on like especially emotionally intelligent. Lois has this great line where she says she felt, beautiful, like she felt like a woman because she was being acknowledged for her mind. Like, and then she also looked gorgeous. Like it was very much like you said, it lived with her. This was all
Mm-hmm.
about how she felt, how she saw herself in that moment, and how that was wrapped in her perception of the dress and perception of herself, and being able to take ownership of that. But I also like that when she had her alone scene with Clark, where they were talking about, I need you. Like, I love that you love me like this. I love that your love for me and your attraction to me isn't just how I look. But we also have to acknowledge that it's going to be weird. Like, if we could just
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge that it's going to be different, that would really be important to me. They also talked about intimacy. Like, I was wondering where they were going with that when she, didn't want him to kiss her. And she's like, I don't feel good because she doesn't feel like a woman now. She's barely feeling like a person. She's so sick all the time. Like, she's just existing. And she's like, that is a big part of our life, though. Like, intimacy is a big part of our marriage. We have to discuss this. But then she tried. She's like, you want to cuddle? And they cuddle up on the bed together. And I'm just like, best written married couple on the CW right now. Like, they've taken the crown for me. There is no one doing it with the marrieds like Superman and Lois.
They are perfect. And my goodness, that final scene when she put the dress back on and they danced in the sky. Beautiful. I have no words to describe that. I could feel myself getting emotional as soon as the music started. I thought it was just an absolutely incredible moment, not just for the storyline or where they were, just even out of context. That is such a beautifully shot, beautifully acted, and heartfelt moment. And you're right, Sabrina, nobody does it like this. Just the show, the writing, it was all beautiful. And I think that perhaps that might have been my favorite standalone moment the show ever produced. I just thought it was wonderful, and there wasn't a single cape in sight. I think that's the beauty of the show.
It is, which means that we now have to talk about things that were not so beautiful.
Yeah.
Which was honestly the Bruno part with the adult was fine. Like, I was getting angry at John Henry, but it made sense for him to be very emotional about what's going on with Bruno because he is threatening his family in a very serious way. I love that he called the alternate Earth sister his sister. He's like, he threatened my sister. I was like, oh, she's your sister now? Okay. Like, I want to see the Wonder Twins. Y'all better be building up to that because that's what it feels like where it's going. And I love that he's like juxtaposed to Clark. Clark being Clark is like, I know that he's a terrible person, but his wife is literally dying. And yes, is like what I'm going through with Lois factoring into my decision making on this. Sure. But at least I'm acknowledging that. You are not acknowledging that you are upset because of all that he's done in your life. I really appreciated that. I didn't appreciate the teens because they're like sitting on this Romeo and Juliet storyline that's just not earned. And no one's talked about the elephant in the room. We know that Mateo wasn't planted to try to get information on John through Natalie. They don't know that. So I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
where none of y'all gonna talk about how this boy could actually be manipulating her in any capacity? Am I just being paranoid? Like, maybe, but I feel like you need a paranoid friend. Someone needs to be like, girl, I'm skeptical. I don't know. It just like it just lining up too perfectly for me.
It was a little bit like rushed. I thought the fact is, would they want us to root for Natalie at Mateo, and that's fine. We are rooting for Natalie at Mateo, but we know Sabrina said not me, but it just felt like rushed. I don't know other way to put that. Like they were like these people have seen each other maybe 3 times. They're like, I love you too. And I mean, like it was such a big dramatic moment that you would expect, but I just felt like the background storylining was not here. And the reason we knew Mateo was a heart of gold is because now I feel like we're going to be moving into a territory where he might not be, because now he knows what his daddy's up to, and now he knows that they stand a chance of saving their mom, and now he knows that Bizarro Superman is down in that bunker or train station, whatever. So I feel like Mateo could end up getting roped in, and the fact that him and Natalie have made up now makes him quite dangerous. So I feel like maybe we are going somewhere with that. I do agree. I do think feel like the teen aspect of this episode slightly let it down this week, and that's not something the show tends to do. Um, our frenemy Sarah is far more tolerable these days. They're really having her be the voice of reason. I mean, this is a Sarah from season 1. Where have you been for the last 2 years? That was nice to say. Lots of potential in there, but I agree. I feel like the teen aspect was definitely the weakest part of this episode thus far.
And we have to sit in some of that a little bit later because Jordan had that. Who was it? Natalie was like, "Imagine not being able to be." No, Sarah said, "Imagine not being able to be with the person that you love." And Jordan had whatever line that was clearly shady, and it was about his love for Sarah. And I was like, "Oh, not us going back there again." It got so awkward.
It did. And then when Jonathan left, she was like, "What do I do now?" Because she was just left with him. We know they've bestied them up, but we know they're going to get back together at some point. This is what these shows do, and that stone is not going to remain unturned. So it makes sense for it to come back up. I just hope that we don't go back to Jordan and Sarah conflict, and we actually start making some progress with them.
One more point though about Superman and Lois, because there isn't really a lot in this episode to talk about besides, what the gorgeous Lois fought, the progression they had on Bruno. But I don't know how y'all felt about the very sticking line about John Henry killing someone. I did not care, but the show wants me to care. And I felt like him killing someone is not surprising, especially when the person had already been dead. But even if that was not the case, he was getting thrown all up and down Smallville. What did you want him to do about like the gentleman who was definitely trying to kill him on behalf of Bruno? Like he was an assassin sent by a kingpin to kill John Henry. They're like, oh my God, he killed someone. I'm like, yep, sure did. Can we move on?
Yeah, I feel like John Henry was definitely doing too much in that episode. He was acting out of character, and they wanted us to acknowledge that, and we did. He escalated that whole situation when he did not have to. There was definitely a middle ground, and the fact that Bruno Mannheim, of all people, was willing to meet him on that middle ground showed that John Henry was actually the one acting a little bit out of order, even if his feelings were justified. So I feel like the whole him killing Adam Man in the end, or Henry Miller, whatever you want to call him killing him in the end was supposed to add to that. It's like, oh, John Henry's gone off the deep end. What are we going to do? But I do agree. Like, if that was Batman fighting a superpowered individual and he had to beat him by putting him down, nobody would be like, Batman broke his no kill rule. Because what are you supposed to do? That man died 3 times already. He's not technically alive. And he was going to kill him. Like, he hit him with a hammer. So he died. Rest in peace and all that.
The first thing I've said this whole review is a laugh at him.
I don't. Yeah, he. In the words of the Undertaker, rest in peace, move on, whatever. I don't. I cannot answer that.
They were so upset. I was like, okay, he's gone.
Rest in peace, Henry Miller. You're a classic Superman villain. You've probably overstayed your welcome now, considering you were like a nostalgic act in season 1. But yeah, I mean, like, God bless that man's family if they're still alive. But yeah,
I don't know.
John Henry did what he had to do, and I was rooting against that man for the whole episode. But in that moment, he did what he had to do, and he's still breathing. So Fair play to him.
And he looked cool doing it.
He
And
did.
it's
He
really
did.
great action sequence. I just need them to bring Lex now, though, because I feel like we're starting to languish in the Bruno plot. And I was like, move it forward now. Let's move, like, continue to move it forward. Because I guess with Henry Miller being gone, we'll have Lex and we'll have Bizarro, and we'll start like moving the train on, because they have 15 episodes this season, right?
13, I think.
13. Oh, we only have 4 left. Yeah, move this train
Mhm.
faster, please. Like,
Yeah.
it's time to speed up.
Yeah, I'm eager to see where it goes because I know the previous 2 seasons pulled a twist midway through or towards the end where you find out that the bad guy actually had superpowers or that they weren't the villain all along, like with Bizarro, it turned into Ali Alston then. So is Lex going to be the main villain of the season? Is Bizarro going to come back? Is what can Bruno do now that he's been so overexposed in these last couple of episodes? I'm eager. There's still got a lot of in play, and I'm looking forward to seeing all of it. But I do agree, we're down to what 4 or 5 episodes left now. We could do with fastening up a tiny bit just so that we don't feel shortchanged by the time the finale rolls around.
Fingers crossed they get on that.